Whether it is because of faulty equipment, freak mishaps, or even directors just asking for too damn much, death and cinema have unfortunately often gone hand in hand. Risk assessments be damned. And if there's one genre that feels painfully ironic when it comes to this side of filmmaking, well, it has to be horror. I mean, scary movies are in the business of convincing you that their characters are constantly on the brink of death, which is why it is no surprise really that there have been many near-fatal mishaps on the sets of some rather big horror flicks. So with that in mind, I am Gareth, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror movies that nearly killed actors. Number 10, Ellie Cornell, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Halloween 4 could have been a return to form for the franchise, as it brought back the iconic series antagonist, as you can probably guess from the title. Spoiler, well, it wasn't. It also featured the debut of a new character in the form of Rachel Caruthers, played by Ellie Cornell. But poor Cornell came very close to becoming a real-life horror victim while shooting the movie. During the filming of the rooftop chase sequence, Cornell slid down the rooftop in what should have been a slightly risky but perfectly innocent stunt. However, she was caught by a protruding nail that cut into her stomach, requiring her to go to the hospital for stitches and bandages. But like an absolute trooper, she returned and finished filming, proving that the actors in Halloween movies are tough as nails. Too soon? Yeah, probably too soon. Still, even an extra couple of centimeters on that loose spike could have been the difference between life and death here. Frightening stuff. Now I want to know really quickly, what is your favorite Halloween movie of all time? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 9, Gunar Hansen, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974. When you're making a movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then there's one thing you really can't afford to miss, and that's chainsaws, right? As such, the actor playing Leatherface, the late great Gunar Hansen, got some serious licks in with a real live death saw. Tobe Hooper's classic slasher flick was an infamous near-death fest, as the working conditions were shockingly lax. The set had a host of issues, with two of the most dangerous being the blistering heat and the use of realistic props, the scariest of which was the titular chainsaw. That damn instrument had plenty of near calls, with one of the most frightening coming in Kirk's death scene, when Hansen brought the working chainsaw within 3 inches of actor William Vale's face. Yikes. But the movie's biggest money shot was where death came closest. The infamous final shot of Sally escaping on a truck and Leatherface angrily flailing his weapon looks terrifyingly real to this day. Because, well, it was. Hansen was required to swing the working tool around, whilst contending with a lack of eyesight from his mask, the sweltering heat, and a stinking costume, which he wasn't allowed to change out of during the whole shoot. It's a miracle that final shot didn't result in a real chainsaw massacre, really. Number 8, Corinne Neik, Poseidon Rex. Some horror movies like The Shining, The Babadook, and Hereditary will withstand the test of time as examples of how profound, deep, and nuanced the genre can really be. But then there are others so terrible you'll forget you've even watched them. Take a guess as to which of those categories Poseidon Rex falls into. Yes, this baffling and cheap horror flick that shows a dinosaur wreaking havoc on land and sea is the kind of cheap schlock that's not even worth a viewing. However, this crappy film does have one shocking fact to its name, and that's that it nearly killed Stargate's Jonas Quinn, i.e. the actor Corinne Neik. Neik was slated to take top billing in this film, however that soon changed as he was involved in a collision on his way to the set. Whilst riding with the Belizean Coast Guard, ready for a day of filming, their vehicle collided with a semi-submerged barge. The former Parker Lewis Can't Lose star suffered massive injuries, including breaking his leg in 3 places, shattering most of his right side, and requiring blood transfusions to stay alive. Thankfully, he pulled through in the end, but he understandably did not return to the set of Poseidon Rex. Probably for the best though, right? Number 7, Hal Berry, The Call. You hear stories about actors suffering major injuries on set quite often, really. Hell, this whole list is a prime example. But if there's one actor who seems to attract these accidents like a magnet, it is the unlucky Hal Berry. This Oscar-winning actor has had multiple brushes with the Grim Reaper on set. One horrid example includes a helicopter stunt that gave her an eye full of shrapnel on the set of Die Another Day. You've also got the time Robert Downey Jr. broke her arm while shooting Gothica. But shockingly, those are just the tip of the iceberg, folks. When it comes to her horror movie experience, it's not just Gothica that messed her up, as she also had a frightening seemingly close call in this flick too. During filming for WWE Studios' The Call, Berry was involved in a fight sequence that saw her take a nasty tumble. She fell headfirst onto a concrete floor and was knocked out, resulting in her being taken to hospital. A WWE film with a concussion, yeah, that seems appropriate. Thankfully, the Catwoman star came out of the incident with only minor injuries. But still, head trauma is a terrifying thing that can go sour very quickly. So this one was definitely a real near miss. Number 6, Brendan Fraser, The Mummy, 1999. Okay, so maybe calling The Mummy a horror movie is a bit of a stretch, but it certainly has plenty of scary elements. I mean, I was scared. Plus, one infamous day on set almost turned into a legitimate nightmare. If this mishap right here had gone any further, you would have had to kiss goodbye to the Brendan Fraser renaissance. During the filming of this seminal 90s classic, Fraser was involved in a scene that saw his character hanged by the neck. For a close-up shot, Fraser had a hemp noose tied around his neck and was required to act as if he was choking. Ultimately, Fraser and Stephen Sommers, the director, wanted it to look real, so they performed a second take with a tightened noose. This time around, Fraser pulled the look of a choking man off perfectly, mainly because the rope was so tight that he genuinely ended up asphyxiating himself. Uh-oh. After legitimately choking himself out, the popular star had to be resuscitated by EMTs. It was fortunate that they were there too, otherwise things could have gone haywire. Every actor wants their performance to look as real as possible, but maybe there are times when exceptions should be made, like here. Cheers for checking out this video today, my friend, and if you're enjoying what you're watching, then hit that subscribe button down below for more What Culture horror stuff in your life. Number 5, Paz de la Huerta, Nurse 3D. Eroticism and horror go together like a fine wine and a mature cheese. Sure, it's not for everyone, but anyone who does want a cheeky drink or slice can find plenty to satisfy their needs. You do you. One such movie that niche horror nuts can find death and lust in is Nurse 3D, a trashy B-movie about a killer nurse. What else were you expecting? However, there's an irony to this film, as despite the medical aesthetic, one of the most ubiquitous signs of life-saving almost killed the main star. During the filming of this scary movie, actor Paz de la Huerta was involved in a stunt whereby an ambulance was supposed to drive past her. Unfortunately, the stunt vehicle failed to miss its target, instead plowing right into the Boardwalk Empire actor. Naturally, this was an insanely dangerous accident, and could have easily cost her her life. In the end, she pulled through and the movie was actually finished. However, she did end up receiving workers' compensation for her injuries. Maybe she should have received irony payments as well, as nearly getting killed by a fake ambulance is so ironic it's almost a joke. Number 4, Oliver Robbins' Poltergeist, 1982. The Poltergeist series is mired with tragedy due to a multitude of unfortunate events that caused the movies to be labelled as cursed. The most tragic of these include the untimely deaths of 2 of the first movie's stars, Dominique Dunne and Heather O'Rourke. However, while those awful losses happened off-set, this one we're about to talk about right here nearly came at the hands of the film's freakiest prop on set. In one of horror's scariest scenes, the young Robbie Freeling's creepy clown doll gets possessed and attempts to kill him in Tobe Hooper's film. To shoot this, a mechanical version of the toy was rigged, with its arm tightening around actor Oliver Robbins' neck. Yep, you can probably tell where this is going. During filming, the poor youngster ended up getting choked for real by the mechanism. What's worse is that his desperate cries that he couldn't breathe were mistaken for improv, leading to the stunts continuing until his face turned purple. Thankfully though, Steven Spielberg, who wrote and possibly directed the film, depending on who you ask really, did manage to save the kid in time. But man oh man, that was a close one right there. Number 3, Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair, The Exorcist. Everyone knows and loves The Exorcist. It was a cultural phenomenon that still packs a major punch to this day. However, the movie's horror isn't limited to what happens on screen, as the filming featured not 1 but 2 horrendous injuries. During one scene, Ellen Burstyn's character is slapped across the room by the possessed Reagan. To achieve this shot, Burstyn had a wire wrapped around her and was pulled onto her back by a stuntman. The director, William Friedkin, ignored the actor's attempts to raise concerns about developing a serious injury injury, and the stuntman pulled her even harder. This resulted in poor Burstyn landing way too hard on the floor and screaming out in pain, a shot that actually made it into the movie. The incident resulted in permanent back damage too. As if that wasn't bad enough, 14-year-old Linda Blair also suffered a major back injury. When capturing the horrifying scene where her body thrashes around the room, the young girl was rigged to her bed and thrown back and forth. However, loose lacing caused her to thrash uncontrollably, fracturing her lower spine. Like Oliver Robbins, her screams and cries were mistaken for acting, leading to the poor girl suffering extended pain. And this accident would actually lead to Blair developing scoliosis. Yep, scary stuff behind the scenes too. Number 2, Lorenza Izzo, The Green Inferno. Eli Roth's The Green Inferno is a horror movie designed to homage the Italian cannibal films of the 80s. Well, in that sense, it certainly came close to capturing the, magic of movies like Cannibal Holocaust. As while that flick featured unsimulated animal death, this 2013 movie nearly resulted in the demise of its leading lady. In the movie's near-deadly sequence, Lorenza Izzo's Justine was taken aboard a canoe piloted by the villainous cannibals. In an attempt to escape, she jumped into the water to try and swim away. Whilst filming this sequence, Izzo was overpowered by the current, nearly drowning as she was close to being dragged under. Her screams for help were misunderstood in the end, as it was so loud that the stunt supervisor couldn't hear her yelling out the safe word. Eventually, they realized things were going wrong and finally stepped in. Still, even a slight delay could have seen the actor completely submerged. As if this story wasn't dramatic enough, the pairing of Lorenza Izzo and Eli Roth would begin a relationship and get married the year after The Green Inferno was released. Nearly accidentally killing your future wife. Now that's a real special meet cute. Number 1, Taylor Hickson, Ghostland. Now, no one would blame you for not being familiar with Pascal Laugier's Ghostland. It's a solid horror ride with some disturbing implications and a unique chronological perspective, but it's hardly the kind of thing you need to go out of your way to see. Despite that, if you're looking for tragic movie accidents that nearly resulted in death, well, it's got you covered there. During the filming of this somewhat of a slasher flick, the young actor Taylor Hickson was directed to bash her hands against a glass door in an emotionally charged scene. Hickson grew concerned about the safety of the stunt, but was continuously told by the director to hit the glass even harder. Eventually, and inevitably, the glass shattered, causing Hickson to fall forward. This resulted in shards of glass going into her face and an emergency trip to the hospital. In the end, she required 70 stitches. While most other actors on this list were left with nothing but frightening near-death experiences and stories to tell, Hickson was not so lucky, as this accident resulted in a permanent scar on her face. Thankfully though, Hickson has continued a strong career despite this incident, appearing in shows like Deadly Class and Fort Salem, which is something close to a happy ending, I guess.